Que el camino suba hoy a tu encuentro, que el viento dé siempre en ti.
Exactly.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Council's Goal-Setting Workshop. Is this thing on? Yeah. Goal-Setting Workshop. The way we'll proceed with this is we'll go through the program, each department presenting whatever they need to present to us. Huh?
You do a flag salute? Flag salute?
No, it didn't call for one, but we will have one. Let me just finish this. And the way we'll run is let everybody go through the program, let the council respond or ask questions, and then when we're through, if there are any members of the public who wish to ask a question or two, we'll let them do it at the time. And to start this thing off, let's have the flag salute. Please join me. Okay. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Say.
Roll call, City Clerk. All 5 council members are here.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
before we start on that goal-setting item, I had a call from one of our community members, Jerry Kendall. He's the chair of CEV, and he wants to make sure that our community is very well prepared at all times, and he would like to explore with the council how to engage the community. I thought that would be a good idea to put it in one of our goals, or if the council wishes to agendize this item for a meeting. He's here in case if the council is to just hear him what he has, what he likes to say, and put him in one of the goals or just have it agendized. It's up to you.
Prepare for what?
Emergency pre-partners, our CEV, it's hard to get everybody involved, and he wants to make sure they're prepared.
I think the best way to do that is we have the OES director here with us tonight, and during his presentation, maybe you can mention that.
Yeah, we can do that, but he's here. He has to go to work early. In case if you wanted to hear what he has to say, he needed 2 minutes.
Let's follow the program, right?
Sure,
So
it's up to you guys.
Otherwise, we're going to be here. Who's going to open up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Tonight, is this on?
Yeah,
Tonight is our annual goal-setting session, and as you know, we're doing this a little bit differently than we've done it in past years. This is being televised to the community, and hopefully that's we'll get kind of a maximum exposure in terms of the conversation about the various things we've got going on in the city. Before we get too much into the goals, what I'm going to have is have Stuart come up here and walk you through the financial projections and also kind of an update on our 5-year reorganization staffing plan. As you may recall, we started to recognize kind of the financial issues that we thought we would be facing, and certainly the problems that we've had with the economy as well as with the state of California. And we started planning for that as far back as 2008, and we put together a staffing reorganization plan, recognizing that we were going to have to downsize to some extent. Our goal through all that has been to basically continue to provide the same services, maybe not all the same levels, but the same basic services, continue to operate the programs that we have historically operated and maintain the facilities that we have historically maintained. So far, so good. We have some challenges, as you know, in front of us, and Stuart will get into that a little bit. We have a particular challenge, as you're aware, with regards to our number one sales tax producer, who very well be leaving town in the next year and a half. And we are also working, as you are aware, with Recology, who has property up at our northern border, and we're working with them on a fee structure that could capture some of that revenue and maybe perhaps more revenue going into the future, depending on what their development plans ultimately come out to be. The Recology plan is part of the EIR for the draft EIR for the Baylands area, so it is kind of moving forward on its own, and we are studying that. Though that financial picture is obviously a significant one, as Stuart's going to walk you through. We have a reasonable chance of being able to kind of continue as we are under current circumstances. But if you put into that equation a loss of your major revenue source, you have an entirely different scenario, entirely different situation, and we're going to have to try to address that. You have a council subcommittee, and as we go through the goals here tonight, many of the projects that we are working on are being worked through council subcommittee. So you do have a council subcommittee that has already made some recommendations to you with regards to labor contracts, and they are also charged with the coming forward to you with recommendations with regards to the budget and fiscal issues, and we will continue to work with that committee. And as the year progresses, start to look at options that the council may wish to consider going into 2012 and beyond with regards to that. So that is, I guess I do want to sound an ominous tone, because that is a very serious situation if it goes very badly for us. If we are able to make up some of the revenue, we will be able to, I think, bridge a period of time and actually, in maybe down the line, get back to where we are in terms of a revenue base. But right now, it does appear that we're going to lose that sales tax producer, and I'm not at all optimistic that that's going to change. Not that all has been given up on that, but it doesn't look really good at the moment. As you can see around the room, we have a variety of different boards up that all reflect the various projects and programs and goals that the city is working on at the moment. We'll show those up on the screen so that people at home can see them also. They are kind of we're trying to do for the council and for those that are watching to kind of just provide a status of what is going on with a variety of different programs and projects, and then have some conversation amongst the council in terms of priorities, concerns, thoughts in terms of where we ought to be heading with those. All of that is good dialogue for the council as a group. And as I said earlier, a lot of these things are being worked on by council subcommittees, so they will be coming forward in different forms for you throughout the year. If there is additional items you want to put on the table, tonight's the night to really kind of do that, and let's have a conversation about that. There obviously are concerns with regards to staffing some of these things now, because we are down significant number of staff members. But the thing that I think we need to do first is kind of identify those areas that we want to explore, and then we can work on where the priorities are and how we can try to get things done. With that said, I think I'm going to turn it over to the Deputy City Manager / Administrative Service Director / Finance Director. That's the way we do things these days. We put more and more duties on everybody.
Stuart, is your nickname Slash now? Slash.
Not for my point guard abilities either. I can assure you that. Mayor, Council, so let me see if I can actually push a button and make this thing work for me. Wrong button. No, there we go. Wrong button. I was pushing the laser pointer. That doesn't work. So before I get started with talking about the 4-year projection or the future projection, one of the things I like to go back to every time is what the values are, what we're trying to achieve in the city. We have 6 values: informed, involved, environmentally progressive, fiscally conservative, caring, and safety. This is slightly different from what you have seen before. The last time I stood before you, I had six values, but we switched one out. The one we switched out was interconnected, And we switched that out with fiscally conservative because, as one of the council members said last year, fiscally conservative is kind of the overarching value. And what we found when we were talking amongst the subcommittee getting ready for this year's survey is that interconnected and caring and involved are all kind of the same. So in order to keep the number to 6, because I like the number 6 for some strange reason, we switched out fiscally conservative for interconnected, because I think interconnected was already covered. And just to remind everybody, informed is that the public input is based on diverse ideas and interests, that educational opportunities offered on diverse topics that impact residents' lives. Information is provided to ensure residents can participate in decision-making and events. What we want to have is an informed public, so that way we make the best decisions possible. Involved, all age groups have access to cultural and social opportunities. Businesses are integrated within the community. And Brisbane provides working, shopping, housing opportunities for community members. And this is where we kind of merged the interconnected with the involved, because a lot of the second two were more the interconnected one. So the comment on that one is Brisbane will celebrate the rich diversity of our community by welcoming residents of all ages, cultures, and encouraging their civic involvement. And that, I think, very much gets to the heart of what our community is. It's a very involved community, that there's a lot of opportunities for people to participate, and people don't all have to be the same to participate. Environmentally progressive. I think when it comes to our community, this one speaks for itself. You know, we consider ourselves a regional leader in clean energy and air pollution control technologies. We ensure the highest level of water quality. We continue to reduce the community's waste stream. But more than that, Brisbane will be a leader in setting policies and practicing service delivery innovations that promote economic sustainability. And I think that we have a community that's looking at sustainability on the Baylands. I think that statement sums it up what they're trying to do. Also, you know, we were one of the first with the green building ordinance in the county. So we have been environmentally progressive. We have been a leader.
In the state.
In the state even, yes. Fiscally conservative. This one is a new one. As I said, general fund reserves, funds will be maintained in order to be used for emergency purposes. This is something that the council has been very strong about, has been very protective of in the past year, and it's really helped us weather the recession as well as we have. You hear about other cities going through a lot of difficulties because they did not have enough in reserves to be able to deal with decision-making in a logical way. They needed to cut their staff quickly, immediately, and have immediate impacts on their community. Whereas, because we had enough in reserves, and we still do have, as I will show you, we still have good reserves, that we're able to, as I would say, grow into a smaller budget. Of course, whenever I say that, Clay has a smile. Thinking about growing smaller is kind of weird. Prudent financial decisions will be made with the least amount of impact to valued services. Staff will provide thorough and accurate data for policymakers. Hopefully you've come to expect that from us. And Brisbane's fiscal vitality will reflect sound financial decisions, which also speak to the values of this community. I think this community has, over the years, through a number of different actions, have shown their sound fiscal decision-making, whether it be the school district in passing the property tax override, whether it be adopting a new business license ordinance, which is different from anyone in the state, or an increase in our TOT or room tax. They have shown the need for ensuring our finances are strong. Caring decisions are propelled by stewardship of the environment. Individuals are treated with respect. During public forums, opinions and ideas are freely shared and openly received. I think that kind of just sums up who we want to be. Safety, if something happens, assistance is available. And also, staff anticipates and prepares in order to minimize incidents. You know, this is, I think, the watchwords of not only of our public safety departments, police and fire, but also Public Works does that. What's interesting for me is when we did the survey last year, we found out that people even see our recreation department as having public safety and the safety of the children in mind. So safety is an extremely important aspect of our city. We did a survey, and I just want to quickly summarize what we did last year. We did a survey last year. We included it in the STAR. We provided respondents $10 off their water bill. As I reported last time, I thought that would have gotten us more respondents, but we only received about 180 back. And the survey focused around the community values. And some of the results, you've already seen this once before. People are well informed on community events, less informed on the planning issues. So we need to try and work through that process, getting people more informed. Facilities help create a sense of community. People love the facilities we have, the community park, the Festival of Lights, the concerts in the park, all things that bring the community together. People feel very safe in Brisbane. I think that is something that we've seen over the years, over and over again, that people who live in Brisbane feel extremely safe here. Staff treats people with respect. I think that was something that staff was hoping to see, and we're very glad that we did. That people are willing to ask neighbors for assistance when it's needed. I think that's one of those other areas that makes a small town, that you know your neighbor, and that if you're having a problem, you can ask your neighbor for help. And neighbors are willing to help. I know in my department, there are 2 or 3 people who pay the water bill for their neighbors who they know are struggling financially. So, I mean, it's just one of those things. I think when something happens, the community comes out and is very helpful and helps. You saw that when we had the landslide a few years ago with the rains. People were out helping. I think that's just what we do. More people read city publications and visit the website or watch council meetings. So that's actually a very good way to get information to the public, is the publications we send out actually are read. So I was glad to see that we're not just wasting our money on that issue. We're having another survey coming up in February. We reviewed it with the Performance Measurement Subcommittee. We also asked the Open Space and Ecology Committee to give us a couple of questions to get a baseline of what people's knowledge is on some of the energy strategies that we're trying to achieve to reduce our carbon footprint. We're going to mail it to 500 randomly selected residents. I don't know who they are yet. We haven't selected them, but we're going to do this from our water billing database. And we hope to get between 350 and 400 respondents. That will give us a good scientifically diverse number. So we're not expecting everybody to return them, but we are expecting a good proportion of them to be returned. And what we will do is we will number the surveys, and we will have the numbers with the people's addresses. And when they come in, we will check off that address returned to their survey. We will then turn the survey over to the person who will code it. They won't know who the survey is from. But this way, we can resend the survey out if we don't have enough on the first mailing to those who have not responded. One of the things that I heard from the community when UPC did their survey, that they were very concerned that by having them numbered, people knew which people answered what questions which way. We are making sure that we are separating the person who codes them from the person who's tracking whether or not they come in. So the person who codes them will have no clue who they are, who they're from. And we do need to have 350 to 400 to come in, so that's why we need to have the numbering, so we know who we need to remail them out to, because nothing is more frustrating than having filled out your survey and getting a second one to fill out again. So that's why we're doing it that way. Moving on to the 4-year forecast. The numbers are pretty much what you saw last time. Last time I ended this forecast was in 2013, 2014. At that time, we were thinking we were going to have about $500,000 in a deficit at that point in time. As you see, we still have about $500,000 deficit in 2013, 2014. 2014, 2015, the deficit is shrinking, but not by a great deal at that point. So we are still working on ways to close that gap further. One of the key areas that the City Council talked about was not having the fund balance go below $5 million. If in all 4 years here, we're not anticipating it to go below $5 million. So we're meeting that goal of the council. But we know, as on staff, and council has expressed it, that we want to start building that reserve up as quickly as we can, as soon as we come out of this recession, because I've been doing this work now for 24 years, and it seems invariable every 10 years we have another recession. So we want to make sure that we have the reserves available to guide us through the next recession so council can make good, rational decisions and not have to react out of panic or fear. Some of the assumptions that are used in here is that I'm assuming a 3% increase in PERS rate due to a change in the discount rate, and that will impact us in 2012, 2013. So the way that PERS determines what their rate that they charge us, it depends on how much they earn on their investments. So right now they anticipate earning 7 3/4 every year, and I will say for the last 2 years they've exceeded that. But based on the numbers that PERS has, if they keep the same mix that they have today, they would anticipate earning about 7.5% on their investments. They will make that final decision in February. However, everything I'm hearing is that they're going to probably lower their discount rate to 7.5. I think that's a good idea because it's more fiscally conservative. It has a lower target for them to shoot for. I think they'll be able to achieve that better going forward. However, that will increase our cost to us as employers by 3%. There's also another 3% increase in PERS rates due to the 2008 stock market decline, and that would hit us in 2013, 2014. They're spreading it out slowly over a number of years. What they did is they increased the window of their asset allowed. So it used to be the assets had to be within 80 to 120% of market value. This year it could be between 60 and 140%. Don't worry, it's nowhere near the 140%. It's within that, it's close to that 60% range. So they're able to slowly grow into that increase. What PERS was aware of, a number of cities were having difficulties financially, so they were hoping that by postponing the large increase, that cities could plan for it better, which I think we can. And also, I think to some extent, they're also hoping that as the stock market recovers, they won't need to have such a large increase. And we are, in fact, seeing that because they've had 2 years of double-digit increases from what my understanding.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Is that why it's showing that the base expenditures are going up, even though we have staff cutting back and
Yes.
wages are frozen?
Yes.
Because of PERS specifically only?
PERS and health insurance.
Health insurance, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have assumed no change in the labor contracts. All the labor contracts are open for this July. We're looking to work with our employees to come to agreement between now and July 1st. We have not had our first meeting with them yet, so that may be an area where we could potentially look towards some savings for this. I assume no change in businesses. This is a very big assumption. This is something that Clay had talked about earlier, about VWR. If VWR leaves and we don't have another revenue of that type to fill the hole, we would be coming back to you with many different questions for council to consider as to how to get our budget back into balance.
Through the mayor.
Yes, please.
What would be that dollar impact if they do go?
It would be between $1.5 and $2 million.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I can't tell you exactly because it's proprietary information,
Yes.
but it would be significant, even in my terms of significance. I'm assuming no inflationary increases for the ongoing expenditures, and I also assume the Northeast Ridge is built out by July of 2013, so that helps our property tax a little bit. I put in an assumption that when Northeast Ridge builds out, we'd get about another $100,000 in property tax. My guess is we'll get closer to $150,000 based on what the houses have sold for in the past. But as you know, I like to be a little bit more conservative, so I ratcheted it back to $100,000. So that the housing prices don't quite hit what they were in the past, I would have some cushion, not to be wrong. So those are some of the major assumptions that are out there for this. As you see, we still have a little bit of work to do. If VWR leaves and we can't find another revenue source, we would have a lot of work to do to be able to provide services to the community. Moving on, Clay told you I was going to talk a little bit about our staffing. This is a staffing chart that I showed you about a year ago. It shows you the positions that we were anticipating closing and where it shows you the ones that we were looking to change in some fashion. So about a year ago, we were looking to have an overall change of about 16.25 decrease in our staff. If you notice, we are missing the assistant to the city manager we were anticipating to retire, and in fact he did. We anticipated the community development director to retire. He did, and what I'll show you on the next chart is that we actually moved the principal planner up, but we've frozen the principal planner position. We anticipated the senior planner to be frozen within that period of time to leave. We anticipated decreasing the number of interns we had over the summer. We anticipated, and we knew that we had 3 firefighters that were gone. We were anticipating our director of marina services and aquatics to leave, our marina maintenance worker to leave, and in fact he did leave this past year. Our parks and recreation director we're anticipating to leave within this time frame. We're anticipating our administrative assistant in Parks and Rec to go from a full-time position to a half-time position. We still have open our teen coordinator position in the teen center. We were looking at increasing the police chief from a half-time police chief, because if you remember last year, Tom was here on a half-time basis. We were anticipating going to a full-time, which we've done with Lisa Macias, and to freeze 2 commander positions, and to also reduce 2 police officer positions. And then in Public Works, we were looking at reducing our maintenance workers, and from 8 to 6. I picked a new color this year because the dots were really driving me crazy, and I couldn't find them again on the new PowerPoint that I had. So if you look at it, it looks very similar, but we're now down 20.21 positions. So we're down about another 4 positions from what we thought of a year ago. The changes, as I said, the principal planner we're freezing, the senior planner we're freezing. The interns, we're actually not going to pay interns anymore. We would still like to get interns. We are hoping to get them for free. The firefighters, we're down 3 firefighters in this one. We found out in the marina that we really could not provide justice and provide adequate care and concern to our marina with only 2 part-time employees. So we froze the full-time employees, but we hired 2 part-time employees. So that saved us money on benefits. And also they were at a lower position, so it saved us a little bit on our salary. Our Parks and Recreation Director, we're still anticipating being gone. Our administrative teen coordinator would still be gone. Commander, we only had 1 commander at the time, so I changed that to 1 commander being gone. Our sergeants, we have 4 to 3 sergeants, so we only have 3 sergeants, and in fact that has happened already. And our police officers going from 11 to 8. So we're down 5 in police at this point. In Public Works, we had 2 associate civil engineers leave. Both of those positions are now frozen. One is going to CCAG today, probably, to become the NIPD's coordinator, countywide coordinator. And then the other one took a job elsewhere, and we froze that position. Our Public Works supervisor is a frozen position. We used to have what was called 3 lead workers. We changed that to a team leader, because as we froze the Public Works supervisor, we needed to give more authority to the team leaders, or the lead workers. We called that a team leader. We had 3, we're down to 2. So we're cutting staff there, and we have 1 reduction in our public maintenance workers, so we're down 3 in Public Works now, whereas before we thought we were only going to be down 2 in maintenance. So as you see, there's been a number of changes. As positions have come open, we have frozen them. And the reason we freeze them is because we really are looking at this bottom line number and recognizing that we need to make that turn positive as quickly as we can. So as positions come open, they're being evaluated to make sure that we can still get the basic work done. And if we can get the basic work done, we are freezing the positions. So we anticipate within the next 2 to 3 years, we will be down about 20 positions within the city. And that ends my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I
Questions,
do,
Councilman?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, please.
We've been doing these freezes in positions when when people have left for a while. Has there been any input or any feedback from the community in regards to a service not being to the same standard that they experienced in the past?
I'm going to look to Clegg. I mean, nothing that I've heard of directly myself, but they wouldn't talk to me that.
Well, and the department heads would probably be able to input in their areas. I think there's been some areas that we haven't been able to get to as quickly as we did in the past, and we maybe aren't, we have to prioritize, particularly in the maintenance area. I think Chief Macias can probably speak to, the impacts with regards to the police department, because they are down people. There are specialty assignments within the police department that aren't there. So, yeah, I mean, there should be no illusion that you can lose this number of people and not have some impact. But I think our goal has been to continue to provide the basic level of services. So we provide police services, fire services, maintenance services in our parks and our streets and in different utilities. But there may be impacts on those, and especially I think in the maintenance area, we've had complaints about Tunnel Avenue, but we're working. Probably not a good example because Tunnel Avenue isn't actually a city facility; it's a private facility. But we don't have people to necessarily respond and just take care of things in the manner that we did in the past. But the employees, I think, have really stepped up in a number of areas. I mean, just this past weekend, I mean, I know it's a very small thing, but we were moving some offices around in City Hall, and the employees just basically got together and did it. We didn't hire anybody to do it. We didn't take the public works maintenance guys off the streets to do it. People just pitched in and got the job done. So, I mean, I think people are trying to step up and do the best that we can. But, I think there are going to be areas. And I think as we told the staff or talked with the staff all along is that, as we move along in this process and, we get complaints or people raise concerns to us, we're going to have to adjust. And that's fine. I mean, obviously we want to provide services that the community feels are the most important. So, I think there has been some areas, and I think there will continue to be.
Sure.
If I could just piggyback on Cliff's question is I would say, my biggest concern, and I'm sure the rest of the council shares this, is with public safety as a critical threshold. And I guess, I'd like to hear from the chief of police and the fire chief on what they think that critical threshold is, because, if we lose another officer or firefighter or paramedic, that could be a critical crossover point where, we're kind of losing that service, and that's where I don't want to go to that point. And so I'd like to know what that is beforehand, versus, reacting to it.
Yeah, and I think they certainly can respond tonight, although I will say that gets to be a very complicated question. Mm-hmm. And certainly if we, the worst case scenario, and we lose $1.5 million in revenue, your budget is still well over 50% public safety. And so, we are going to have to look at different models in which we provide those critical services. I think given the current models that we have, I think both departments are kind of down to where they could possibly be. Chief Myers has some thoughts, I know, in terms of repositioning ourselves as more of a medical response fire department. That's a possibility. There are, I think, some issues with regards to police that you could potentially work out with other agencies. But again, those are all big policy issues. But if we are going to continue to provide the kind of basic services we're providing right now, I would say police and fire are probably at their number. We can't really go much below. I don't know. Well, the fire department basically has 9 firefighters, so we call people back and overtime and when there's sickness or illness or vacation or whatever, so you can't really lose anybody else there if you're going to continue to operate three-man companies. And the police department, I think, is the same way. I mean, they're pretty much stretched in terms of assignments at this point. There may be a little bit of give, but not a lot.
I think you brought up a subject that all the cities are struggling. I was at a meeting and they were talking about fire department pretty soon is going to be a regional fire service. It's what we used to know. They're just gutting it down and totally looking at different models, the same as police department. We are very comfortable with what we have, but finances are forcing cities to look at things differently. And it's sad, but
Just, just to follow up on Councilwoman Richardson's comments, I mean, Brisbane has kind of been out in front of that issue in terms of our fire service delivery. I mean, we went to the North County fire management model almost 10 years ago. And that's something that's now being looked at throughout the county in different cities. So, we're way out in front of that.
And one of the other things, following up on Councilmember Richardson's comments, is, you look at San Carlos, which has gone to a different provision of police services. Right now I'm sharing a portion of my time with Half Moon Bay, trying to help them through their budget issues, and they too are looking at a different provision of police services. I mean, this is becoming more and more the norm to look at how can we provide quality services in different fashions. And as Clay says, we've been out in front of this not only in public safety, where for a time when we had a full-time police chief, we shared that with Millbrae. Our Parks and Recreation director right now is being shared part-time with Burlingame. When Hillsborough needed a human resources person, we sent our HR person there for 3 months. So, I mean, as a city, we keep looking for ways that we can share services with other cities and how we can best provide services to our community while at the same time doing it as inexpensively as we can by sharing with other cities.
and I think those are the things that we've done to be able to do what we're doing now. If we would not do what we had done, cost sharing and cutting down freezing positions and having a great reserve, we've been able to go through the worst of the economy, and I know this year and next year we're going to be hurting.
Yes.
But I think we're going to be able to make the tough decision.
And I think this is the reason why, for me, bringing fiscally conservative up to one of the stated values of the community, I think is very important. Because that's one of the decisions and one of the factors of the values that council has always looked to when they've made decisions. It's one of the values that the city manager looks to when we're trying to figure out what's best for this community. We want to do what best we can, but in a fiscally conservative fashion.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you need to have the balance, and you have to have that sustainable perspective looking into the future. So I'm glad you put this together and put that in your list of 6.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next, sir? City manager?
You kind of look at this as like the family gets together to talk about finances, and now that we've got all that taken care of, now we got to talk about where we want to go on vacation. Okay, we have outlined 16 issues. Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm going to go through these really quick because you're all familiar with them, but people at home or watching, I think we should go through them and at least identify what the issues are. And then really what tonight is about is the council having a conversation about these and providing some direction and asking questions of staff. Every department head is here, so they're ready to respond to what's written before you and to any other ideas and thoughts you have. So the first one is the affordable housing program. We have a first-time homebuyers program out of last year's goal-setting week focused on the Rebuilding Together program, which we're working towards tentatively an April 30th couple projects. That's not finalized yet, but that is the hope. And then, of course, the Habitat for Humanity project that has been we've been working on for a number of years. Did I go the wrong direction? Okay. Baylands process. As you know, the draft EIR will be out later this year. We're going to be studying the applicant's proposal, the city's alternative proposal, and then a alternative energy proposal. When that comes out, we will probably, no doubt, have a hearing with the council and the planning commission to present the EIR, and then the process really is for that to go to the planning commission and start down the road for a review of the EIR as well as the project itself. Climate change, there are a number of initiatives, as you're aware. A number of council members have been involved in various aspects of this. The Open Space and Ecology Committee is looking at some recommendations to bring forward to the council. Downtown Brisbane, we've been working with the Chamber on a number of issues, parking enforcement, cleanliness. We've been continuing to work on the library affordable housing project next to the Eagles and potentially the purchase of the Eagles building. As you know, we've already put in place the business license tax funds and the Northeast Ridge funds. Both of those are really contingent upon the economy getting better. And then, of course, the other issue with regards to affordable housing is the potential elimination of redevelopment that is in the governor's proposal. If that were to go through, we may be coming back to you to potentially establish a Brisbane Housing Authority so that we could keep the housing funds that we currently have here local and not have them go to San Mateo County. But those funds will run out relatively quickly because they are, after July 1, at least by the proposal by the governor, there would be no additional housing funds that would be generated every year. So we would be able to spend what we have, but that would be the end of that. The fire station, as you know, we are currently operating in a temporary fire facilities. We spent a lot of energy and a lot of effort to get that up and running and try to get the firefighters in a safe environment as quickly as we could after we became aware of the mold condition there. Right now that's kind of on hold. One thought is to kind of put any further thoughts in terms of this fire station on hold pending the review of the EIR from the Baylands and looking at whether or not this site really is long-term where we need to have the fire station. I know that hasn't really been talked about too much in the past, but frankly, at the moment, we don't have a lot of funds to work with in terms of rehabilitation of the facility, and it may give us a kind of a fresh time to take a fresh look at the location. Housing element, I know this is one of our favorite subjects to deal with here, but we have successfully gotten through the past housing element. We do have a considerable amount of work now to start doing in terms of the rezoning of the properties that were identified, plus the evaluating the form-based codes. I will defer to John Swickey to explain to you form-based codes if you want to get into that in any greater detail. But the next part of this is that we will be starting the next round of housing element at your next council meeting. Will be the beginning of that process. The Library Eagles project, as you're aware, we have engaged the Eagles Club and we are working with them collaboratively in the potential of relocating them to what is currently the Teen Center site. We will probably know more about that as the year goes on. Randy and his staff have done a great job working with the consultant that the council authorized to hire a couple months ago, and really having a collaboration with the Eagles and seeing if there's something that can work for them and work for the city and work for the community. We've also, at the same time, had some preliminary discussions with the school district about potentially moving the teen center up to the Brisbane, or up to Lippman site. There is some interest in the school district to do that, and that is the age group, for the most part, that uses the teen center. So there may be some real opportunity there. We'll be coming back to the 2x2 committee to have a further conversation about that. Economic development, these two projects, both out in the Baylands, are, I think, kind of core to our finances over the next few years. As you know, we worked with Recology. They got their project in the draft EIR. We are also working with them and the City and County of San Francisco on a fee structure. We've also had conversations with Sierra Point Lumber, which has long-term interest in trying to rebuild their facility out there, actually move it. But in the short term, they may want to try to do an interim use permit to expand their operations, and they are one of our stronger sales tax producers in town. Redevelopment agencies, I think, as you're aware, and probably members of the public are aware, there is a proposal by the governor to eliminate redevelopment agencies as early as July 1st of this year. The city of Brisbane, we have had two redevelopment project areas, one essentially out at Sierra Point and one out in the Baylands. They overlapped, or not overlapped, but they merged together out on the Baylands. The issue for us there is that when, at the end of the day, even though some of the sales or some of the property tax gets sent back to the underlying taxing agencies, we would have a net loss of revenue if the agency went away. We would also lose potentially the powers of the agency relative to the Baylands area. And it would also eliminate the affordable housing dollars, so projects such as the senior center that you did, Habitat for Humanity, those kinds of dollars would not be there in the future. And we would also not have dollars for the public infrastructure that's going to be needed out on the Baylands. So it would have quite an impact on us. I think you've probably seen in the paper that the major cities in California that are affected by this, which is all the large cities, have been lobbying in Sacramento and have had meetings with the governor. And there is some reason to believe that there might be some compromise that's worked out short of actual elimination of the agencies. We'll see. In preparation for this, staff has been working to come back to the council, and we will be coming back to your February 7th meeting to put in legal form, legal documents, all of the arrangements between the city and the redevelopment agency. Because we've been we've always operated the redevelopment agency as kind of a function of the city. We handled most of the financial aspects as kind of accounting functions, and some of them we didn't have legal documents that back those up or supported those. We need to get those in place. We've been working with the city attorney to do that and with the finance staff. So that will be coming to you on your February 7th meeting. School JPA, which is this in bus agreement, this refers to the decision last year by the council to support the bus program. It's staff's intention right at this point to put this back into the 2011-2012 budget, but it is something that I think that the council may want to consider going forward beyond that point in time in terms of funding. San Francisco Airport noise, Councilman Richardson and I have gone to a number of meetings in the last few weeks, as well as some other staff members and several members of the community who have really gotten involved. And I'm not sure at this point that we're making a lot of progress, but you did have the presentation from the Airport Noise Abatement Office a couple weeks ago, and we were continuing to work with them. Our next step is to try to get a meeting with TRACON, which is the federal agency that is involved with air traffic and potentially could have the authority to do things differently than what they're currently done, or how they're currently done. Shared services, we talked about this a little bit. There is a lot of talk in the county. There is a group formed out of the city managers group that I'm a part of that is looking at a variety of different potential options. Lot of difficulties and a lot of roadblocks to shared service models, but there is a lot of conversation going on about that at this point. Sierra Point Design Guidelines, your Economic Development Subcommittee, which is Council Members Lentz and Conway, have been working on this, and what our next plan to do is to invite members of the community that have a particular interest in this issue together and to talk this issue through a little bit, and then hopefully bring this back to the council for consideration, this year. I would say that our idea with this has always been to try to get the new design guidelines in place before the next wave of development happens, the next development pressure out there. And if you've been reading the newspapers recently, there is a lot of going on in the office market on the peninsula, and it's starting to improve considerably, and it's starting to heat up. So it's really, I think, imperative that we get in and make whatever decisions the council is going to make with regards to design guidelines this year before it's too late. The sustainability issue for the Baylands, there is a committee, as you're aware, that includes a member of the council, a member of the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Commission, the Planning Commission, and the Open Space and Ecology Committee. And they are working on developing a framework for the sustainability issues out on the Baylands. We've had a couple meetings so far. We have a meeting set up later this month, or later next month, I guess. And we're working very feverishly on trying to come forward with some recommendations. And I think that would probably be timed, certainly, with when the EIR comes forward. Sustainability at Crocker Park, I think this is an area that we talked about quite a bit a couple of years ago, and it got kind of put on the back burner. But it's an issue that I think is really probably important for the Economic Development Committee to work on with the chamber. We've had some conversation around that, and that will be moving forward. I will say that the Economic Development Subcommittee, we've met, I think, 3 or 4 times. We've got a lot on our plate. We have a lot of conversations going on, and a lot of interesting things, I think, that we're looking at in terms of being more proactive in trying to attract the kinds of businesses to Brisbane that the council ultimately determines they want to have here. So it's been a really good conversation, and there's probably going to be a lot of things coming forward to the council later on this year with regards to that.
We've gone further than we've ever gone before in the history of the city, that's for sure.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. The conversation has certainly gone further. Water and sewer rates. I know this is like a bad rash. It just keeps coming back year after year, but the issue is not getting better. As we've known for a long time, San Francisco is going to be passing on pretty significant rate increases with regards to water for their Hetch Hetchy upgrade system, and that is happening now. We're anticipating a 30% increase in the water rates that we pay to San Francisco. We have a backlog of our own capital needs, and we have not raised rates for 2 years. So that is going to be an issue that will be coming through your subcommittee. It's a difficult issue, I realize, but it's one that we've got to tackle for the fiduciary responsibility that we have over the utility. And that's it. So with that said, as I said, the staff is here to answer questions. This is a good time for the council to have a conversation about these issues as well as any other issues you want to put on the table. As I said, staff is ready to partake in that in any way you see appropriate.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would love to talk about airport noise. I do recall, and plus you did some checking with Fred and others. Many, many years ago, there was a situation that we had to actually sue San Francisco Airport. And I think what we're gathering really is they have to make some changes to accommodate all these expansion of the flights and United and Southwest and the impact of Oakland expansion and bringing new flights such as Arab Emirates, China Airlines, Virgin, United, all of that. They really thought that this small city, it's a quiet city, let's just do what we like to do. I'm really putting it in that word because that's what's been happening. They think they can do anything they want. Truly, every time we meet with them, they give some information that is not consistent with what they had said before. So it is really serious, and from day one, anytime Bert talked and so forth, I said, this is issue with TRACON. Because the minute the plane starts taking off, it goes to TRACON. It is not with San Francisco Airport. They are the ones that are really changing, and they persist that there is no change in pattern. I really do believe there is a change in plan. This 4-mile thing about going and doing a 4-mile coming by Gazebo, one time they said they're not supposed to go here. They're supposed to go to Cow Palace and so forth. What they're trying to avoid, not to go to San Francisco. And there is an agreement for no shift to other cities because other cities cannot really take this. So it is time for them to really look at other places than Brisbane.
Well,
It is
San
serious.
Francisco, San Bruno, and Millbrae signed off a number of years ago with this package to allow that, which they took to insulate their houses, replace their windows. It was quite an extensive thing. I don't know when it happened, in the early 80s,
Yes.
late 70s or something like that. And Brisbane never signed on to doing that.
Thank God.
And Brisbane did have a lawsuit, I know, that was settled in 94, maybe 95. And I don't really know what the gist of that is and how maybe, there's something we could research on what it was, but
It had something to do that if we went with that agreement, we would have no right of filing a lawsuit. And I believe Brisbane did not want to lose that right.
yeah, Brisbane never sold out.
Correct.
And we have a right to do a lot of things. I mean, but like you said, I think to work with TRACON, at least at first, and then maybe look at some other alternatives. I mean, the community might want to start, looking at, doing some, to me, the only way to hurt them is to hurt them financially, and that's the only way they feel pain.
Correct. We have been able to we have excellent community members. Some of them are very sharp, some of them are really engaged, involved. We're picking up the rally that we need to to heighten this issue. I'm telling you tonight, and I've said that many times, if we don't stay on the top of this airport noise issue, we would become TANFAN. Okay? No ifs or doubts or whatever you want to call it. It is so critical that we must be on the top of this to an extent to be prepared to exercise that independency that you guys, I wasn't here, when you guys fought airport and they backed out or did whatever they had to do. It is time to stay on that independency and show them that we might be small, but we're not going to totally destroy Brisbane because their economic benefit is more important than the rights of our people. Even if they come, which is impossible, they don't have the money to come and put noise-proof every house. They have flat roofs are deadly. Doesn't matter how fancy your windows are, how many panes you have, flat roof would destroy any effect from that protection. What about the air quality? Okay, we have very active people in community that they say that is very important to them.
Well, the noise quality, I mean, if you want to go outside, the beautiful part of Brisbane is being outside, being on the hill and the mountain,
Correct.
and you got the jets blowing you off.
Correct. Flights come, and sometimes truly the decibel is 80 decibel, 90 decibel. And they say, oh, we didn't detect it from those 3 noise monitors that we put in, because they look at CNEL. They don't look at single incident. They compile all of the noises and come up with an average. And the reason they do that is because there is a federal requirement that if it's the noise is 68, anything up to 68, they don't have to do anything if it goes up. So they do anything they can to keep that perception that is 65 CNL, decibel. So I'm very concerned. This has to be very, very important for us, for the future of this community.
Oh, I agree with you. It's, you know, it's gotten pretty ridiculous here.
It is pretty ridiculous. So we're getting to go, and the person that is truly in charge of TRACON is a lady called Patty. Very nice. But she turned back to me and she said, well, flights have to go somewhere.
Well, you can go down the middle of the bay and out between the arches of the Golden Gate. It's not that big a
Go over
deal.
there, not in Brisbane. So I hope, I know people are watching this, are listening to this. Make your calls. I know some people say, oh, you know, we've done this before. They're going to do what they want. It doesn't mean we have to drop dead and let them do what they want to do. It is not, it should not happen. We haven't fought this long to make this community so beautiful. Look at the community. Look at that. Anytime I drive, I'm so proud of this town. And then I see the plane coming, it just totally destroys everything.
Savi, you know, when we had that representative before the council, they acknowledged that one of the flight patterns, the pilots have not been doing a good job. That was the color-coded one. If the pilots fly that one route where they head north and then make the turn east, if they cut that turn correctly, it does not affect Brisbane. It's only when the pilots do not follow the rules, right? So they acknowledge that, but it's the flight pattern that I think everyone is upset about, and that's the one where they fly east, then they make that turn towards the north, and then come across Brisbane. Now, the representative said that it's not the pilots who are making that call. He says it's the air traffic controllers.
TRACON.
Right, okay. Now, just recently, we get this news that it's a 4-mile out and then turn, which puts us right over Brisbane. And they say, well, this has been the flight pattern, and this is the way that it's always been. Right, we know it's a bunch of BS, because we were all under the assumption that you fly out to the bay, you make the turn going north, and then when you cut to go west, you're going over the saddle part,
Yeah.
right, of San Bruno Mountain, where there are very few people. I think we need to make sure that that plan stays in place, because, you know, like this person said, the flights need to go somewhere. We all acknowledge that. But have them fly over areas where they're less populated and in effect fewer people. Plus, if you go further north, the planes will get a little bit higher, and thus the effects of the noise will be less when they're coming across San Bruno Mountain. So, but then how do we get there? How do we make sure that happens?
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, we had to go, you know, this is one of the things. If you don't go through the appropriate steps, then they're going to come back and say, well, we didn't do that, we didn't do that. If you don't ask the right question, you're not going to get the answer that you want. I don't think they're telling us, unsophisticated word I'm going to use, I don't think they're lying. What they're doing is they're not telling you the truth. They don't tell you what you need to know. It's the fact that our citizens have to
Omitting.
omitting, yeah, that's a good political word. I mean, you've seen at the meetings, I get pretty frustrated. My fuse is very short. At the same time, Clay is very diplomatic, very good, and so forth. You got really frustrated. You got frustrated with the fact that I'm really confused. You just said this, and you're just saying this. It's crazy.
Yeah, as you brought up, I mean, there are 3 airlines that are the major contributors to the flights going over Brisbane that cause the most noise pollution. United, Virgin Atlantic,
Southwest.
and Southwest, right? And they make up such a huge majority of those awful flights. Other airlines are doing a better job. So you can point to the ones that are doing a good job and point to the ones that are not and say, well, we need to have consistency. And then also doing the proper flight. I mean, I think if we stick to those two principles, there are proper airlines that are doing the right job, right flight patterns, and sticking to the flight pattern that goes over the fewest amount of people.
Correct.
And keep hammering that drumbeat that hopefully eventually we'll get to the results that we like to see.
We had
Now we kind of have an official, unofficial subcommittee of just SEPI and then staff working on it. Why don't we really appoint a subcommittee with 2 council members to come up, work with the city manager and the city attorney to come up with a strategy of how we're going to effectively communicate with TRACON and the other thing, the steps that we're going to need to take, because personally, I think it's probably going to end up in court again, and it may very well be where, and I'm sure this wouldn't come from the city, but every citizen in Brisbane or every household in Brisbane files a small claim lawsuit in court.
right, and I think that's where it's heading. That's the unfortunate situation that's heading that way. And one of the things that we were at the control tower. There were 3 takeoffs, 3 of them. And the guy said that what we're doing is we're trying to avoid flights from Auckland, Southwest, doesn't interfere with the departure flights that are going to come this way and so forth. Out of the 4, there was 1 possible interference from Southwest. The other 3 had nothing to do, but exactly they were sending the flights right through Brisbane. So I appreciate what you're saying, that because this is becoming really a top issue. If you allow us to continue one more meeting with TRACON to exactly know what's going on, then form a subcommittee and come up with plan of action. And I know you were part of were you involved with Airport Roundtable before, and you seem to have known some stuff.
Not really.
Is that something you would be interested to be involved?
In the subcommittee?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Cliff would love it more, though.
Well, but I don't have any, but, one of the reason I'm saying that, I have no problem who.
Yeah.
But Cliff has sustainability, that, so it's up to you.
I don't have a problem with it, but, I'm kind of like you. I'm not very tactful when I talk
But that's why I'm asking you.
to people who are full of,
We need 2 people who are not tactful.
So is there a motion to appoint a subcommittee?
Just a
One more.
point of information, we did a tour last week, and we're doing it
Yes.
this week. There's 1 additional spot if a council member wants to attend, and you go and you'll meet with the airport noise abatement people, and then you go into the tower and you'll get the demonstration. And I think it is, the visual side of it is somewhat illustrative of what, the issue is. So if there's another.
Actually, 2 of them can go because we have
1 more
5.
slot.
Huh?
We have 1 more slot,
Just 1 slot? Okay,
One more.
1 more.
right.
I was
Just
in
one
the
more.
tower last year, so I'm.
Yeah, I remember last week, Council of Cities.
Thursday at 1 o'clock?
Thursday, 1 o'clock could be fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you can give his name to Brett. So, I make a motion, if you don't mind, to start a subcommittee
Well, it says something we have to agendize, I mean,
Oh, okay,
Yeah, you do.
okay,
I'll make a note that
okay, okay.
All right.
And maybe we can do it after TRACON.
On the agenda calls to provide policy direction to staff on budgetary and present-day issues facing Brisbane. What are you looking for here?
Well, I think
Sir.
you're off to a very robust start with your conversation on the airport noise. I think really if you go through the 16 items and where you want to elaborate further on those, or if there's additional items you want to add to the list for discussion, that would be great.
you know, something that was said earlier at the beginning of the meeting, there was a gentleman here that had some
Yes.
suggestion, that, you know, if it would, I'd kind of like to hear what his idea is. I know we have Randy Brower, OES
Yes.
manager here, and perhaps, you know, maybe
Yeah, Jerry Kendall,
Randy and, you know,
Jerry Kendall is here.
yeah,
He's the chair of CEV.
Jerry here.
Yes, he's sitting in the back.
Jerry, did you have something you,
Come on forward.
come on forward.
Thank you, council members, for the impromptu addition to the agenda. I'm Jerry Kendall, 37-year resident, and equally proud to be a 20-year member of the Community Emergency Volunteers. And what I would like to see is some way of giving higher profile to what we are trying to represent, a skilled, trained, representative neighbors, of which we number 50 to 60 approximately right now, of which there are probably 15 to 20 active, not unlike most volunteer organizations. And what the irony is, we are missing the disaster that creates the need and the urgency for more people to be involved. That is something I obviously do not wish on anyone, especially the group that we've been all of community that we share as in this community. And what we're also trying to do this in context of stirring interest is creating more identity, a higher identity, and a purpose and a reflection on what we're capable of doing. Because the reality is, in time of a crisis, we want trained town folk. The more trained, the less likely we're going to have those circumstances that could create long-term grief. So for every circumstance that allows us to have a broader number of people capable of responding with the skills ranging from fire suppression through disaster and mental health, with our CPR and first aid training. Thank you to what Randy has offered through the Office of Emergency Services and the Brisbane Fire Department, who has trained us throughout this process. We are reaching a point where, because of the challenges facing the community and the more immediate needs that exist, attendance and response has been less than we had hoped and desired. If I could be agendized at some point in the future to come up with a context for how to approach this in greater detail, I would be most appreciative.
Great.
Thank you for the opportunity once again to speak.
Thank
Is there any
you.
questions that any of you have?
No, but
Council?
yeah, Jerry and Clark, I know. I think I'm part of the CEV group, and I know very frankly, when I see training comes, I say, "Oh, I've done that, been there, done that." Don't attend it because I've had it. It's a regular problem with other CEVs. But I guarantee you, when we have a disaster, I know I would be the first to say, "Oh, what did they say? What happened? What am I supposed to do?" So I don't keep my expertise or knowledge preparedness all the time. So I'm sure from the fire department and Randy can come up with some frustrations or some ways other cities are dealing with. How do you keep your people prepared at the same time respect the time that they need to have for their own and so forth? So I think that's the dilemma that you're facing.
Especially in the last few years, since Randy and myself and all of us within the organization have had to abide by the new FEMA-based CERT
Right.
context, not the community emergency volunteer that Clara Johnson began immediately following the Loma Prieta quake at '89. We've only been activated twice, which is what's going to occur if and when the need for response is
greater than what the city can provide, then, but we need trained people, because once again, I must repeat, the more people that are aware of us and have a chance to participate, those are fewer people that we're going to have to immediately respond to.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Jerry, and I totally agree. And you know, Director Bro has preached this many times whenever we get him on the subject, you know, that the best preparation that people can do is starting within the household and develop those guidelines. And I think we have given those out, and so maybe this is really a question for staff to come back with some feedback to the council, because, you know, really it's a volunteer basis and it's not a twist your arm basis. And, you know, I certainly share your concern with, you know, because when something happens, it's like, well, how come you didn't do this or that? You know, it's like, you don't know until it does happen, and preparedness is 90% of the battle, you know, and you know, it's just can never do enough training. I think fire chief, police chief, Director Bro would probably agree with that. You know, it's an ongoing thing, and how do you keep people stimulated and involved? And I think that's kind of more of a question for staff is to explore, and maybe we can do some more specific communication, because there's a lot of things that we have done, and it's just, you know, people have their lives, and it's like, you know, out of sight, out of mind if they don't read something, you know, and, oh, I wasn't here, you know, went away that weekend, or, geez, I was watching a football game, I didn't want to go down to the marina, or, you know, whatever's going on, so.
It can be a question of priorities, and I should point
Yeah.
out that I'm very appreciative during your time as mayor that you made it to our meeting to supply diplomas, offer your hearty support and handshake. I hope, Si, that this will be something that you're going to be.
Yeah.
I know how you felt towards the fire and the city services in general for all the years you've spent.
Yeah.
But thank you again for the opportunity to give exposure to this, and I'd be open to providing specifics when opportunity allows.
Yeah, if, yeah, don't leave just yet. You know, I'm glad that you came down tonight.
Thank you.
You know, in Stuart's presentation, he talked about involvement and you know, being informed, and, you know, just all those things that keep the community together, right? And Clark, you know, talked about, you know, what, you know, the highest goal, you know, priority is public safety, right? And so you're kind of like, you know, your organization helps blend the two, which is, you know, very, very unique. You know, you're gathering these volunteers and providing these safety things, you know, in case there's a major disaster. You know, you know, the folks that would sign up to be a part of the CEV, to me, those are leaders. You know, those are people that want to step out and be very active with their involvement in the community. You know, I would like to see us perhaps reach out to some of your members to see if there are other ways that they can be involved, you know, perhaps in leadership positions. Because sometimes we have times when we have an opening for the planning commissioner or a planning commissioner, and we get one person who signs up, or open space and ecology, or PB&R. But then also on our end, I would like to see that be a major goal for us, to help you get more folks interested. And you know, I'm not sure what programs we have in place to go out and recruit people, but you know, looking at the neighborhoods and trying to get folks in every you know, on every street to be part of the CEVs, and you know, trying to look at, you know, what areas of expertise would help have a more balanced CEV team. You know, it would be nice to you know, to have on there. So you know, I think that's
Yeah,
that's a great goal.
I'd like to hear from Randy, you know, given his annual spiel on this. I know it's near and dear to his heart, and so it's a good subject, so I'd really like to hear Randy's thought on this. And
Yes, sir, thank you, and you're well aware it's one of my favorite subjects. And it's interesting because the problem we have in Brisbane is not a lack of sense of volunteerism. It's almost the opposite. It's that we have too many people volunteering to do too many things in their lives. I can't think of any of my neighbors, any of my fellow coworkers on staff, just people I know throughout town who aren't involved in 2 or 3 other extracurricular activities, whether it's working with the Lions Club or whether it's working at the Eagles or whether it's being an elected official or coaching multiple baseball and soccer and wrestling teams and all of those things that we do. And as Jerry pointed out very correctly, the interest in the emergency response training for civilians is very closely, its peaks are very closely associated with major disasters. In the years I've been here, it's been when Katrina happened, everybody was interested. When we were getting ready to do a wildland evacuation exercise, we had the fire that initiated out by Owl Canyon, people became very interested. But it's very difficult to get those folks to come in and to continue to train and to stay fresh when they are not getting the opportunity to put their skills to use on a regular basis. I suppose the analogy would be if you were somebody that thought you liked to play tennis and all you ever did was hit against, you know, a ball machine, right? At some point in time, you'd want to get out and actually play with another person and see if you were any good at it, if you will. And if you couldn't get that opportunity, well, you might stop going down to the court and hitting that stupid ball back across a fence at nobody. And I think that opportunity to provide the times when our CVs can go out and work is difficult to come by. But yet the challenge we have is that the skill sets are in fact perishable. So if we have folks who are CEVs and who are anticipating that they're going to be able to participate as an affiliated volunteer and work within an emergency response organization, they have to stay current with us. We have to see their smiling faces a couple of times a year. We have to see them at annual exercises. But it's become very, very exceedingly difficult to gather those people in. So I think probably what we need to do is sit down, myself and the 2 public safety chiefs and some of the folks from the advisory committee, from the CEV advisory committee, and start to brainstorm this and think, you know, do we have the right model here? I mean, let's stop kidding ourselves that we're going to get 120 people here and they're all going to be fully trained through 8 different training modules and they're going to show up once every quarter and once every year. I think we've demonstrated that that's not going to happen. So let's, you know, look at, well, what have we demonstrated is going to happen? Is there a way to, you know, enhance that? And let's work with a model that we know we can make work. That if you're only going to get people once a year, let's figure out what opportunity they would have in the event of a real disaster. You know, if we think that we're only going to train people once and then not see them again for 5 years again, think about what that means. And maybe there are other ways to leverage, like we've talked before, you know, especially with Councilmember Conway when he was the mayor, very concerned about making sure that we have an understanding of who our medical professionals are in town. But even with those folks, we need to gather them into the fold, if you will, and at least give them some understanding of how we operate under the National Incident Management System and how a structure is going to be set up and where they're going to report. It's not, whether it's medical or anybody else, it's not just, you know, rush into a scene and then everybody does whatever they do. There has to be a command and control structure. It has to be an organized way of resolving it. Otherwise, it creates more discontent and possibly causes more harm than good. So having said that, yeah, you know, we've got a lot of people in here that work real hard. And I know if something happened right now, you know, anywhere, everybody would rush to it. Everybody would rush to it. We would have a difficult time turning people away, but we would have to, because there would be so many people that would say, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? And the challenge we look back at is, you know, we don't know what you can do, because right now when we're in the midst of responding, we don't know what your skill set is. We don't know that we can ask you to help the fire department set up a triage section, because we've never seen you before. But you want to help now, and that's a great nature, that's a great part of the town. But I do think we're just going to have to go back and look and see, you know, what is our availability? How many people do we really think we can gather from, you know, a nighttime community of 3,600 people? That's who's here when the lights go out and we go to sleep. And that's what would be available during a disaster, and see what sort of roles we can reasonably plan for them.
May I also add something to, Randy just mentioned something that we faced last time when we had that fire. There were some people that pretending that they're helping, they weren't from this town at all. They were from outside. They could be, as far as we know, I mean, they could have been going, directing you to leave while they go to your house and clean your house. So how do you get to know your neighbors? Jerry and I were talking about how do we get connected with our community when somebody is really sick and we don't know anything about it? We know in town there are people who are very ill. There are people who are seniors or whatever, even young, that they don't have the money to do what needs to be done. I know we cannot be everything for everybody, but how do we really expand this CEV thing to understand what community engagement means? It doesn't mean that it's only coming to the council meeting or attending. Community is truly about community, getting to know your neighborhood, getting to know who's hurting, who's suffering. How can we be of help?
Yeah, well, I think it's a good suggestion, Randy brought up, to get with the other staff members and some key members of the CEV and brainstorm some ideas. And, one idea, especially, with Ron, you being in charge of the North County fire of Daly City, Pacifica, and Brisbane, is maybe looking at doing some joint exercises with other cities, or maybe those cities having it and Brisbane members participating, and certainly when he had that fire, there was a lot of Daly City police officers that, came to Brisbane and they were up on Kings Road and didn't know a lick about, what the hell's going on, man. I've never drove a street this narrow in my life, and.
And sir, if I may, that's a great idea, and staff had its ESP on. And so at the last annual exercise that we did, we actually brought in CEVs from Daly City to act as simulated victims. And there is an exercise coming up, and I'm going to forget when it is, Chief. It's a Silver Dragon exercise. But his preparedness officer, Matt Lucette, has been very actively involved in coordinating the three agencies under North County Fire Authority to all have their CEVs who are volunteering to participate in that. So we are moving along on that. But I think that Matt Lucette and it's not Captain Reale Vasquez over in Pacific, I believe. He just changed I think they just switched over. There's another officer in their police department. But we all report the same problems. We all have the same challenge of not being able to have enough contact time with these people that we want to be able to train and utilize.
May I offer one last comment?
Please.
One thing that we should be proud of is, as a community, we have a higher percentage of people who have participated to some degree in the training process than any other city I know of in the peninsula, based on our population base, based on the numbers that have taken at least some training from us. And I must once again repeat my appreciation to the Brisbane Fire and to North County as it is now, and to Randy Bro and the assistance that his organization has provided us. And what we're looking for is, as Councilwoman Richardson's comments indicate, to be proactive, not just reactive. We need to get people to recognize the kind of things they can do in their own lives that can make a difference before the fact, so they'll have less ramifications after. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that gentleman wanted to talk about airport noise. Did you,
Oh, I was gonna say,
Dan,
I used to call.
can you come to me?
Oh, sorry.
come on, Dan.
While we're talking about the subject, I used to have it on my speed dial.
Yours
I just
name,
gave up
Dan?
calling him because I didn't think it did anything.
Your name for.
Oh, come on, y'all know me. Danny Ames, 690 Sarah Point Road, 25 years.
You don't have to give your address.
Okay. Well, but maybe you should put it on the sign in town when you're driving into town. Hey, guys, don't forget to call the airport. I gave up calling them. I used to call them all the time. But now it's like, I was told we take our turn with airport noise, and it's shared amongst the different communities. Is this not the case? We're getting the burden of the airport noise?
There is no shift in noise. The cities cannot push it to one city to the other. That agreement is fixed and concrete. Your phone call should be made Doesn't matter what. We've been publishing it on the stars. Any chance didn't we have the phone number on the bulletin board right at the
It's been
park?
on the board a few times.
Yeah, it's been there very regularly. So I think it's also on
well-
the TV station that we have.
I guess I have to be reminded because it seems like year in, year out.
Okay, how do we get to people like you that don't see the board?
By
that
saying
don't-
it does make a difference to make that call.
How do I let you know that?
To say, look, it makes a difference. Continue to call the airport.
Do we have any more
Yes.
refrigerator magnets? Oh. Maybe we ought to
But anyhow, that's what I wanted to mention. That's why I raised my hand. I thought, oh,
Thank you.
it's still important, huh?
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe if they went out and a little thing with the water bill.
Well, they
It's
did.
a reminder.
They went out in the last last notification, one of the last newsletters, a big page, and I think
Yeah.
it was a cut and, hang it up page.
Yeah, we did have that.
Portnoy's, and if not, well, I mean, kind of like what we used to send out every year in the winter for the PG&E on what happens, when the lines fall, is the same thing with the airport noise, just keep putting it in there and,
I think
cut
though-
across the dotted line.
There's like no feedback. It's like this black hole. You call. So, is there any statistics? How many calls have come from Brisbane? Is there any kind of feedback? I mean, it's like,
Yeah, it's
okay, I called.
feedback we have to solicit, and they do give, Seppi's our representative on the airport roundtable, and she does get statistics that she
That would be
brings
good.
back,
Interesting to
that,
see,
Maybe we should
could.
start printing.
Yeah, we do have the information at the library, but we
Say
can
there
make
was this
that a
many
routine
calls,
thing.
and
at the
it has this
council.
kind of an
Yes.
impact.
Yes,
You could print it on the website.
yes, yes.
Food for thought.
And the interesting thing, the schools are hurting very badly. The parents of some kids said that when the teacher is teaching, when the planes come, they have to stop. They cannot teach until this plane goes and continue. That is really, so we've killed it to death to this time, but
That's enough on that. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Danny, appreciate it. So, staff, what, staff? Council, what do we, what direction do we present?
I also wanted to talk about water and sewer, if you don't mind.
We got a committee meeting on water and sewer, but if you want to talk.
Yeah, it's in here. I'd like to talk about it. I realize that we have to increase the rate. I have some other, I don't know, I'm sure there are a lot of other people that might share my thoughts. I pay for water $20, but my sewer is $60, $80. Okay? One person. Maybe the way we restructure our rates need to be looked at. Maybe we really need to look at how can we make sure this account is solvent, is not in deficit, at the same time everybody pays their share.
We kind of did go through that
But
a couple of years ago. I mean, the subcommittee did. I mean, we went through it point by point by point, stepped through it, and it was a long and arduous task, and maybe you want to sit down with staff, aside from the subcommittee, and go through that analysis to really understand it.
But you comfortable with that
Well,
water and,
no, I'm not comfortable with the way it is, but it is what it is, because it's like either, I can't stand our rates, but, I mean, things keep going up. You got a system that, is old, that's been in disrepair. I mean, we pulled a number of years ago, I think, over $400,000 or $500,000 and did all these repairs to it. That's just to repair it. But, right now, we're not trying to do the capital on things, and we're not saving any money on the future. So it's, I think to go through the process is to really understand it.
well, I know how, I've seen that and I understand that. At the same time, when we're talking about really looking at the way we do things, we've done remarkable job restructuring the city hall. Just about we've done that. Does this need to be looked at differently? Is Are other cities doing what? Is that the same formula we are using? Other cities are using that?
I don't really know what other cities are doing.
That, I think we need to really
Staff
look at that.
Staff can enlighten you on
Sure.
what other cities are doing. Yeah.
Well, I think, the staff has actually discussed restructuring the rates on multiple occasions over the last several years. The bottom line is, though, is that we need more revenue. So, what I was picking up from your question was the sense that you were paying too much in sewer. And I don't know in the end of the day that that's where you're going to go with a rate restructuring.
What are the models other cities use? How are other cities handling? Because I do understand our water and sewer rates, correct me if I'm wrong, it's rather high compared to other cities.
Not really, Councilman Richardson. That is not true. I mean, we've gone through various surveys of other rates over the years, and we've been in different places, and I think sewer's probably been a little bit higher than water. We've also looked at the potential of contracting it out, selling the system to something like a Cal Water. But, I know this is a difficult issue, but there are no easy answers here. There's no panacea of somebody coming along and saying, we're going to take on your system that's 50 years or more older, that hasn't been repaired as well as it should be, that you run with a minimal number of staff members, and we're going to be able to come in and do all this and cut your rates. I mean, that's just not reality. That's just not going to happen. And I don't think there's the way we structure our rates, and, we can get into this in more detail, and we certainly have with Cy and Clark over the years, but it's all based on our expenses. And, the reason that the water rates are going up as much is because the cost of buying water is going to go up significantly. Sewer rates haven't been as affected on that, but, we have more and more cost with regards to operating these systems. I mean, there's, in the last 10, 15 years, the amount of regulations that have come down from the federal government, and these are all good things. They're all, environmentally focused regulations. I won't say they're all good things, but I mean, most of it, the genesis behind it is to have an environmentally good, sound system. But there's a lot more reporting that we have to do. And, it is what it is in terms of what it costs to run a system.
Again, I'm drawing on the other cities' experiences, residential versus commercial.
And we break it down that way.
Right.
And clearly we've always said that one of the things that works against us is the economy of scale. If we had more customers, we could spread out some of our fixed costs a little more. That is true. But, that gets into other issues also.
Except, Cy and myself drove staff crazy a couple of years ago with this whole issue.
I remember that.
Yeah, and, we weren't very nice to them, behind the scenes. And if you want to sit on that committee and do that this year, I'd be more than willing to give you my seat.
We just got you trained.
No. I'm not looking for another.
I think Clark brings up a good point. I mean, we've had a rigorous review of this, and really we've had a rigorous review of this over the last 12 years. Yeah. We've had many public hearings and went through in a lot of detail with regards to this. The subcommittee did put us through the hoops. They made us look at every possible option with regards to provision of service, of how we were providing the service. I don't think there's any city service that has been more scrutinized than the water and sewer area.
One of the legal requirements that we are up against is that each of the commercial, the residential, and the landscape cannot pay for the other section. So when we went through this process with FCS Group back in 2001, they went through the process to determine what portion of the sewer, what portion of the water was for each of those three, and then they determined how that could be split between the three. At that time, we raised the rates on the commercial and the landscape more than we raised the rates on the residential. One of the things to remember is that when FCS Group did this in 2001, they were projecting that in order to have a water and sewer system that was paying for itself, we would have to raise rates 250 to 300% immediately. in order to be able to pay for depreciation as well as to pay for the ongoing repair and maintenance of the system. I think we have done, since 2001, I think we've done about 200%. So we have actually looked at the numbers over the years and have raised the rates less than the consultant came in and told you they would need to happen in 2001, and this is 10 years later. I mean, the unfortunate thing that we're facing this year is that the water rates that we're going to have to pay is going to go up. I know the chart said 30%, but that was written before we got the new number, which is 41.2% is what the new rate is coming out of for the cost of water. So if you wait long enough, sewer may actually be less than water, but that's not a good thing because it's just because water rates are going to go up. We've also looked at how do we charge our water and sewer rates over the years, and we charge less on our fixed costs than we do on our tiered costs. And what this has caused us over the years, as people have conserved and as businesses have gone through a recession and have used less water, we actually are running a deficit in our water and sewer because people are using less and we don't have enough in our fixed costs. And that was something that we talked to the subcommittee about. The problem, though, is if we change that formula at this point, the people who use less would end up paying more than they do today. So we're really working through this whole kind of issue. And we have compared to what other cities and other agencies have done. They develop their rates the same way we do. And as Clay said, we suffer from being small. We spread our fixed costs amongst 1,800 users. If we were in a bigger system, we'd have the fixed cost over a larger base. And as Clay said, we've had additional regulations over the years. We had the chloramine issue, which cost us a certain amount of money to be able to have our tanks being able to use that. It causes us to do more flushing. And we will be going to the subcommittee, hopefully, sometime in the near future to go through this process again. But yeah, this is one of those issues that the harder the better we do at saving water, the more the rates are going to go up, because water is the cheap part of the rate for the time being. The cost of water for us to buy is only about 30% of the overall cost of the system. And I think it's something similar for sewer. The cost to process sewer is a little bit over 30% over the entire cost because of the pipes, because of the manpower in order to be available to fix leaks, to maintain the system correctly. And I think 3 years ago when we went through the rate increase, we brought in the water and sewer guys to come in and explain on a detailed basis exactly what that is. And, this is one of those areas I think keeps, Betsy busy and Randy busy. And we're just trying to figure out how to best get through this process. I agree with you. I mean, we all pay the same, we all pay for it as well.
As the economy gets better and hopefully we get some businesses coming to Brisbane, the amount of employees that increases in Brisbane, does that affect what we would all pay as citizens?
Well, the commercial, it has to pay for their own costs. So if they were using more of the overall system, it would. But remember, we were looking at this rate in 2001 prior to that recession. So, there's probably, we haven't re-looked at it, and businesses have probably gone down a little bit because of the recessions, and residents have come up a little bit because there's been some growth. So if we were to look at it again, we may actually need to restructure the difference in costs. I don't know if that would really do it. What would help us the most is if we had more meters. So we would have a bigger base to put it over. But, having a business replacing another business isn't what it's going to be. It's going to be new development. It's going to do the most for us. And I know that's not, we don't want to rely on new development to pay for our services.
Sure.
So it's the tier system that we have is not based on the number of people in a house or number of workers in a business?
It's based off of the amount you use. So what we have is a three-tier system. We have basically a three-tier system. One tier is below 10 units used.
Number that units.
One is below, well, there's a lot of tiers, unfortunately, for water. But if you use more than 16 units, you're paying more than you're using if you pay less. So we actually charge you more the more water you use. So from that perspective, we do charge bigger households or bigger commercial areas or landscape users more than we do the single resident.
Stuart, what's the percentage of our debt service on sewer right now?
What's the dollar amount? I don't know. I could come back. I mean, I'm just off the top of my head, I cannot tell you exactly what we're
Let's
paying.
say that question for the subcommittee then.
Sure.
Because, I mean, I know that that's one of our challenges too, is capital improvement. And if we had a bucket load of money, we'd be able to put into some capital where we don't have to apply a debt service to the rates, and that would help.
Right. And this has been an area, I think, where we've also been challenged by what's going on with the federal government. If you remember correctly, when Congressman Lantos was in office, we got about $1.2 million worth of federal grants, which really helped reduce the capital costs for us. With the change in the Congress change in the Congress over the years, change in what's going on in Washington, we are not able to take advantage of federal funds like we could before. So, I mean, this is going to be a new challenge for us as we go forward if we want to do more repairs. All of it will have to come from the city as opposed to a portion coming from federal, unless there's a change in the mindset at the federal level.
Obama's talking about having more money for infrastructure. I mean, in his speech, he talked about infrastructure.
No earmarks.
But no earmarks.
No earmarks.
Right. So then what we were able to with Congressman Lantos is we had earmarks in the bills. Yeah. Because, from the perspective of us being compared to inner city Chicago or, Appalachia or other areas, we do not seem to be as needy as much as we try and make that case. And this is where I would say that the Congress people know better what's needed in their districts than does the bureaucracy of the federal government.
I don't know, that's a whole nother subject. For what state of California puts into the federal pot and what we get back is just ridiculous. That's where those party lines, they need to pull their head out of their rear.
It's ridiculous.
Work
But
in the state.
it's really interesting. Were you there at the meeting? No, I was at a revenue taxation meeting. The perks for the legislators, okay? Jerry Hill has an apartment in Sacramento. He has a car that state provides. The gas, every day it's being washed. The cellular, all of those. As a businesswoman, when I travel, I stay at the hotels, I pay for my gas, I pay for everything myself. $240 million taxpayers are paying for those kind of perks. Why do we do that? Why aren't they looking at cutting that versus cutting social services and seniors and so forth? I know we're going different. You're
We
right.
can take off on that, and
Yes, you're right. Sorry.
it's one of those G ain't an awful
You're right.
subject.
You're right. You're right.
And there's nothing you can do.
You're
The way
right.
Jerry explained it, it's very simple. They they paid some, I don't know how many $1,000 for the car, but they figured if they had to pay him 44 cents a mile, it'd be far cheaper to buy him the car than to pay him the expenses. So they say. I don't know. But anyhow,
You're right.
where else would you like us to wander?
I wonder.
Fire department. Anything new and exciting?
Mr. Mayor, I
Yes,
have
sir.
a couple
I do too.
from the list.
Please do.
If you don't mind. The first one was, affordable housing, low, moderate housing, and, they brought up rebuilding together. And I just got a phone call today from a representative from Rebuilding Together, asking me to be one of the construction captains for one of the projects in Brisbane. And so, I'm going to be involved with that. But it sounded like the communication with the Lions Club, they weren't getting enough volunteers. So, I think this program is great, and I'm just kind of putting that out there, Si, if you could get some of your guys to, to maybe
And gals.
and gals, yes, to be
I think-
more involved, with this program, because I think it has such a
Bill
great
Detmer-
benefit.
Bill Detmer does some of that. And then there was another one that
Yeah,
did some of
one-
that. It just, they're not getting any calls for it.
Okay, all right.
That's the problem.
That is okay, and that's
Yeah, I just wanted
Speak to that.
We have 2 potential projects in Brisbane, but they aren't yet qualified. So we're still working through that process. So it's not a for sure thing yet.
Okay. Well, one of them, I guess Rebuilding Together feels that it is because they did contact.
Well, they have gotten their outreach out in front of getting,
Okay.
it's kind of like buying your furniture to move into the house before you got the loan.
Sure. Well,
that by the bank?
April is not too
It's
far
kinda- yeah.
away.
I mean, we're hopeful and, we're going to try to work through that just.
Sounds like some other projects we've been working on the last 20 years or so.
So means no redevelopment for this?
No, what do you mean?
Apply to state for some redevelopment, and maybe we can, I'm being sarcastic.
Oh,
Okay.
we don't know about the state.
Thank you for the information, Si, and I'll make sure that they contact the Lions Club and work hard and
Sure.
on making those connections. The other, number 6, was the housing element implementation, and I was hoping that John, if you could speak to the form-based codes and your take on how we get the community involved to apply its input and vision to how those properties might look in the future.
Thank you, Councilman Lentz. The issue with the form-based coding relates to the rezoning that are required to implement the housing element, and that is to, get the number of units that the state has determined is our regional fair share. The issue in the areas, where the area adjacent to the community park and Southwest Bay Shore being the 2 areas to be rezoned to allow either mixed use or a new residential. The issue is that by state law, those units have to be permitted by right. So there's no discretionary review that could reduce the yield. So the way for the city to control that development is through the application of form-based codes, which are basically a very proactive sort of system where the city, the community develops the expectation of how these projects are going to develop, what their physical appearance is, their characteristics, their bulk, their mass, and you write that into the code, and then, that provides quite a level of certainty for the community, because everyone knows up front what's going to be expected of a developer. It's not a reactive process or an iterative process, that the developer knows up front what's required of him. The issue is that it requires a lot more upfront time and attention and thought as to what is the character that the community wants to see within these districts. And that was certainly something the Planning Commission brought up, the need for education about how form-based codes have been implemented elsewhere. And so, we've committed through the Planning Commission to provide them a good educational base for that. And then the idea that for a particular district, you have to go through a fairly intensive community-based process to develop that vision, community vision of what these districts are going to look like in the form of the development. And again, that's something we would expect to work through the planning commission as a sort of a workshop type. It's not something where you go for one hearing and you're done. It's going to be an ongoing, somewhat of an iterative process, education, and then applying what we learn to those particular sites. So it is going to be something we haven't really done here in the city, and I think it's a challenge, though. The Planning Commission is very anxious and looking forward to the opportunity to provide a sort of a proactive vision as opposed to being in a position to have to react to a developer's project.
Yeah, I think that's the proper approach. The city puts its hands on the steering wheel and provides the guidelines rather than waiting for an architect to bring forth a plan, and then we decide, okay, do we like it or not? Now, with the rezoning of these properties, part of the right to change your use and to make it a mixed-use project is that you have to give up 25% of your property to public space. And then if all three of these properties were to take advantage of the mixed-use change, it would provide almost 2 acres of public space for the community. What steps would you recommend for getting the community's input for how to incorporate this public space with what we currently have as our public space in that area?
Again, I think that'll be part of the process we work through with the Planning Commission. What are the community values? What public amenities, what physical configuration best is the best utilization of that additional area? And again, it's going to have to be a very interactive community process about how that is actually designed to to best suit the community's needs. I don't think anybody has a predetermined. Obviously, that's the whole issue with this form-based zoning. You have to let the community somewhat determine what these outcomes are going to be and design to the outcome. Make sure your standards will achieve what the community wants to see. So, again, that process will have to sort of play itself out as we go through the rezoning. Again, also the property owner obviously will be involved in the notification and that iterative design process as well. So that'll just have to play out.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that time when the community does get together and we start to envision what those warehouses could eventually be turned into as far as a really wonderful public space that.
Talking specifically of the Valley Drive and the park.
Absolutely.
Right,
yeah, because we've had quite a few letters about the skate park and wanting to use the money from the Seton Foundation to be used to redo the skate
repaving.
Park. Yeah. But you could see that if you're looking at this area and how does it all fit into place? Perhaps the skate park maybe gets changed to a different location and becomes a better skate park. Maybe the basketball courts are expanded to provide better basketball access. I mean, we don't know. I mean, it'll be something that the community gets involved in and provides input and. But I think it's a great opportunity for the community to to really have a much more complete center of town than what currently exists. Here we have park on one side, and then we have this industrial use on the other. And so,
yeah, it's growing. Remember when it used to be a motel?
the amount of public space is growing. Yes.
And then what a shopping center was water.
Yeah. But I'm sure there are some people in town that will say, "Yeah, I wish that old mobile park was, hotel motel thing was still there."
I'm not so sure about that.
But I would say, yeah, but absolutely. The majority of people, of course, are saying yes. The park is, I mean that's the.
I wouldn't bet on.
That's the number one thing that people say. Like if they can identify the town what they like most about the town, like a place. It is the park, and enhancing
People
that.
from out of town, I mean, that's, probably one of the big complaints of a lot of people in town is, a lot of folks from out of town come to Brisbane Park because they know it's safe, it's clean, it's got good access, the bathrooms. A lot of folks from out of town, probably that laundromat down in the village is used by people from out of town more than people in town. And then they see the park and, Brisbane's got a lot of amenities that, that we're actually, supplying to folks in all the other cities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, the beauty of Brisbane, and the secret's kind of out, and then a lot of people want to live here, but we just don't have, a lot of housing.
That's
So
right.
That's kind of the beauty, too, of being small.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Clay, what else would you need? I think we agree with you on most of this.
There was just one more side.
Okay, yeah.
Clay had mentioned the sustainability committee for Crocker Park, and that perhaps it might be better to just fold that into the economic development subcommittee, if the council feels that is appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, that it seems, of course, we got Larry Purcell here from the Chamber of Commerce and
Yeah.
business owner and president, or, what are you, president, chamber, or chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, and of course is very active on that subcommittee, so.
When you're looking at economic development for Brisbane, you're looking at sustainability.
Yeah.
That's what we want. And so with Crocker being the largest producer of revenue in business in the city, it just makes sense to be, if you want to enhance Crocker, it has to be done in a sustainable fashion. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
I think you guys have a lot of projects on your hand, and
Well, they're on your hands.
Well,
We're simply the
passing it up.
facilitators of
Yeah,
them.
I don't think we want to throw a whole lot more on there.
No.
As far
No.
as,
There's plenty to do.
yeah, this is,
I think that it's also it's unpredictable what Sacramento is going to do, what the governor is going to do, because if he does cut out the redevelopment agencies, we're going to be in a world of hurt, and we're going to have to take a different path,
Yeah, that will have an impact.
Oh, it will.
can I, in regards to the redevelopment, there are, some cities are really rushing quickly to encumber whatever, fast tracking their projects. Would you explain that? How could we do that?
Well, this is really more of I guess there's a financial aspect to it. Well, there's a financial aspect to it, a legal aspect to it, and I guess kind of what's a good government sort of response to all this. The financial aspect of our redevelopment agencies is that at the moment, in terms of their bonding capacity, they're fairly well tapped, so that we don't really have excess revenues to work with. As I indicated before, we are going to come forward and get all our legal agreements into one document, so that if they do go away, we will be able to make claim for past arrangements that were made between the city, the marina, and the redevelopment agency. So we will get all that in place. Yes, some cities have attempted to take what I guess bonding capacity they may still have in their agencies, go out and identify a number of projects they're going to potentially do, and try to commit those funds. I think there's probably some real legal question as to whether or not that's going to be an effective strategy. The problem right now is, you could ask Hal, but the problem is there isn't even a bill to look at the moment, so we don't even know how they're going to draft this thing. And until we do, it's really kind of pretty much speculative. The one area that we think we do need to protect ourselves in, or potentially, is the housing area, where we would, there's been some vague reference that any housing funds that haven't been spent by June or July 1st would then go to the local housing authority. And we're interpreting that to mean the county. But, again, that's not something we know for sure. There is also kind of a question of what the successor agency, the redevelopment agency, would be for the purposes of continuing to pay the bonds. There's some question as to what that might be. So there's unfortunately, there's far more questions than there are answers, and I think we'll start to get a better feel for this in the next couple of weeks when we actually see a bill and we can start reacting to that. But even the introduction of a bill, as we know, is just the beginning of that process. And then there are, I think, from what we understand, a lot of negotiations going on in Sacramento about this whole issue. So,
Do we have any understanding of how this actually would help the state financially?
well, I understand the theory behind it. I mean, the theory is that I think this current year take is smaller, but the year before, I think they took something like 2.2 billion statewide?
Yeah.
2.7?
Last year they took 1.7, this year they're taking 350 to get to the 2 point whatever.
Okay. So the 1.7 billion is so they took 1.7 billion, so that's
Billion.
what they're thinking.
Billion from Brisbane.
No, from Brisbane, it was actually 1.7 million.
Yeah,
Yeah, and 1.7 billion statewide.
okay.
But in our case, and every agency is going to be a little bit different, we had to go into reserves and then actually make the payment out of our housing fund, which with the idea that will get repaid over time to make that payment. I mean, we didn't have 1.7 million in available funds to pay them. So their legislative analyst, Mac Taylor, while supporting the concept of getting rid of the redevelopment agency, has also thrown up the caution sign and said, I don't know that there's 1.7 billion out there statewide. And then the idea is that in subsequent years, the underlying tax agencies would then get the revenue and it wouldn't go to the state. So even the governor's proposal only helps the state out for 1 year. So,
I think I read tonight where the county's in serious trouble. I forget the number of millions that they're short.
San Mateo County?
Yeah.
Yeah, San Mateo County's
So
going
if
through.
this money goes to San Mateo County, we're going to be hurting.
Well, they would get a small amount of money. I mean,
Okay.
Countywide, we're not talking about huge amounts of dollars, especially when you consider I think the county is looking at over $100 million structural
Yeah.
deficit. So that's a significant amount of money. I don't know what they would get when redevelopment going away. They'd get something, but nothing, in that order of magnitude.
So Clay, at our next meeting, we'll have a redevelopment update?
You will have an actual agreement to approve that will set up all the financial relationships into a legal document between the city and the redevelopment agency.
On the 8th?
If the redevelopment agency goes away, we will have the ability to say that these funds are owed the city of Brisbane.
Okay, all right,
And that's the best we can do at the moment.
yeah.
Is that just like encumbering?
Yeah, I guess it is. It's a way of encumbering future tax revenues, yeah. But based on all past agreements.
If I could just add, one difference of what we're doing and what some other cities are doing is we are not creating any new indebtedness. We're not scrambling around and all of a sudden issuing bonds out of nowhere and claiming that as legitimate debt. What has happened over the years is there have been fund transfers from city funds to the agency, particularly with regard to the marina, but also some funds out of the general fund. They have all been documented on the books and records of the city. They all appear on our audited financial statements, but we don't have any document that brings them all together and identifies them, which is what will be coming to you on the next meeting. Mm-hmm. But the difference is that all we are doing is recognizing existing indebtedness. We are not creating any new indebtedness. And the purpose of doing that, as Clay explained, is that if they do come later, if they abolish the agency and come back later and say, well, we want money that belonged to the agency. Even the proposals we've heard have acknowledged that they're not going to try to impair existing obligations. They can't come back constitutionally and negate existing indebtedness. They can't go to the bondholders and say, never mind, we're not going to pay you. So what we're doing here is trying to establish that there is an existing indebtedness owed by the agency to the city, and here's what it has been over the years. So if you try to abolish the agency, you can't do so until these obligations have been repaid.
So the redevelopment is really property tax, the money that would go to the state, and the state would give some to us, some to counties, and so forth and so on. Now the state says, I'm not giving any to the cities. So they're saying something about that it's going to go to the county and to the state?
Well, you pay your property taxes to the county.
Right.
And then they get distributed based on whatever formulas are in place. So what will happen over the long run is that that's just the way the redevelopment agencies will go away. But, it's going to happen over many, many years, if not decades, because we all have bonded indebtedness that goes out many years.
So in reality, really, the money was also helping the school districts. Am I correct? No, it's only,
And I'm not sure, I don't know that I'd make that argument.
you were not
I mean,
making.
I think in our case, it helped the community in multiple ways. Everything from building a fire station to the community park to the senior center to a senior housing project, Tunnel Avenue Bridge to a small amount, the marina that was built out at Sierra Point. I mean, it's played a big role in the way Brisbane has developed and evolved over the last 20 years.
So isn't this some way of helping, really? The property tax gets collected by the county, it's going to go to the state, then the state is going to come and really pay to the county and school district, because this way they're protecting the funding for the schools. I understand there's
Well,
some
yeah.
element to that.
Why don't we do this?
Excuse me,
We
I'm
could be
sorry.
here all night.
But I
Why
need to
don't you,
understand this.
Why don't you, when you come back, give us a little thumbnail sketch of.
Yeah, I think that-
I just wanted to have the
Just
question
so she would
answered, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Just finish the answering this, and then we can continue the rest of it.
yeah.
Well, I mean, yes, there has been various statutory requirements to pass through funds to the school district. There have been agreements between the agencies and school districts to pass through funds. And, I think we can probably lay out for you kind
Okay.
of the general basis of the
Right.
way the redevelopment agencies work and what the impacts on schools, cities, counties are.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir, for a very comprehensive report. I wish we had better news, but that's life.
We have better news in some cities.
At least we've got a reserve.
We do have
It's more than we can say for some of them who have gone bankrupt. So,
Motion to adjourn.
we have a motion to
Second.
adjourn, and we have a second. All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Opposed?
Clay.
The ayes
Thank you,
have it.
staff.